And that when stuff like that happens, what does very well is fascism.
Yeah.
Because what fascism does is it gives you somebody to blame, and you're very angry and you want somebody to blame. Let them be brown. And you
Right.
just kind of like, it's so easy to just like, or let them live in cities and be
Yeah. Right. The
liberals,
elitists. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The
libertarians.
Illuminati and the yeah.
All us where we do it, and or I do it. I don't know
Mhm.
where you go, but anyway, so that when you hear it like that, it's bone chilling
Yeah.
because you kind of feel like, "Oh, this hasn't played itself out yet."
Right.
Like, we're right in the middle of the season.
Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
Hey everyone.
Wow.
That was that cool? Is that fun?
It's totally fun, but it's sort of really kind of bone chilling just how prescient it was. Because at the time that you built that, well, first of all, your hair was a lot shorter,
Yeah.
and secondly, the things that we were freaking out about don't they seem almost cute
Yes.
compared to where we are now.
You know what else is crazy too is I was literally like the last few months I was like, you know what? I need to change that, man. Man, that stuff's not gonna matter anymore. Kamala's gonna be president. I don't have to worry about any of that shit. And now I'm just like, it can stay the same. Nothing matters. Like it's
You got Trump
oh,
dancing, he's been
it's
doing a
so
lot of that.
yeah. As a lazy comedian, it's like, oh cool, I don't have to change any of my material. but
But
like,
as a human being,
yeah,
it's a little bit horrifying.
absolutely, absolutely.
That
And
you were
and
trying to go, like, for the end of the world, and you didn't even get to the gateway.
I know that's the fucking one of my oh my god, one of my friends who's a producer is just like she called me up and after the election she was just like, she's like, I hate to say it, but this is probably pretty good for dystopia, but for the rest of us it's gonna suck. And I was like, yeah, it makes me feel a little guilty.
Yeah, you're like the perfectly titled podcast,
Oh,
which sucks for all of us.
absolutely, really. I know. I was like, maybe I'll be able to wrap it
Can't
up.
even, like, I'm a news junkie
Same.
and have been, and that's, part of why The Daily Show even exists, and
Mhm.
then it got worse while I was there, obviously, because I lived and I breathed it all.
Yeah.
I'm not listening to anything. I'm not reading anything. The only thing that I am allowing to happen is I receive alerts on my watch just because if World War III is happening,
Right.
then I don't have to go shopping. It's very practical.
That's fucking great.
My to-do list gets thrown over my shoulder.
Yeah,
So that's literally the only contact with the world at large
it makes
that
sense.
I have, and so it's actually very weird because it's all on high alert, right?
Yeah.
They're news alerts, so they're always very, like, I look at them and my blood pressure goes up, but I'm like, "At least I'm not watching
Yeah, oh
MSNBC."
my god, exactly. Yeah, there's something about, reading it that there's a disconnect where you're like, at least
Correct.
it isn't I don't see the person fucking up the news. It's just news. It's just
It's
fed in a
just
different
news.
way, yeah.
Yeah, and even though it has a lot of exclamation points or, like, breaking news next to it, it really isn't giving you tone, and
Right.
the thing that had started even before the election really driving me crazy is MSNBC, CNN, I can't even go near the other one. They have, like, this much news, like a tiny little morsel of news,
Mhm.
and then it's just hours of people talking about it.
Yeah.
And I don't want any of that.
No.
I just want the news.
Yes.
Every once in a while, it'll be like a Sunday, and we'll switch over to CNN, and you get the international edition,
Right.
and I'm like, "This is all I need from you
Yeah.
people." It's like 10/10 wins without, like, all of the crazy radio commercials, but with
Oh,
a lot of ads for pharmaceuticals and
yeah.
all of this. effects that apparently come with
Oh,
most of
yeah,
those.
which is like
I
just a smidge of relief and then an instant just dread because you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, I thought this
and I'm
was for
like,
me."
"Wait, did they just say tearing of the perineum? Like, what could
Yeah,
possibly help
and now
me
you
that
got like,
is
"What the fuck is
not
that?"
something I'm gonna go for?"
Yeah, oh
Like,
my
that
god.
sounds so uncomfortable and really kind of, like, embarrassing. Like, you go to the doctor, what do you have to do? Like, pull down your pants and bend over, like, "I think I tore something," and the doctor's like, "Oh, are you taking Effexaloca?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yes," and he's like, "You didn't listen to the side effects? What in the world would you take that medicine?"
Mhm. Oh my god. And the worst part, like my mom is going through all this stuff now. She just turned 65, so she keeps going to the doctors. But every time, it's like if she needs to go to the doctor, they actually the rarity that she gets to see her actual doctor and not a
Oh, no, you
PA.
see nurses
They
and PAs, but
Yeah,
PAs are actually amazing, and
they are.
I have breaking news for you.
Uh-oh.
I'm the same age as your mother.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, you guys would get along so well. That'd be great.
Oh, I'm sure we
You should
would.
hang out. Oh, that's fantastic. She'll be happy. That's
Yeah,
like
no, the drug ads definitely they speak to me a lot more since I've
oh
crossed
yeah.
over sort of very big, life
My
event.
my girlfriend, she had to go to the doctor for something or whatever, and she actually had to go to some like a specialist, like a new dude or whatever. And she was like, she just came, she called me and she was like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but she's like, every time I go to see the doctor, they treat them like they're fucking rock stars.
Oh, yeah,
She was sitting in the thing and she was like, the nurse or whatever was like, I'll introduce.
he'll be right in. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And she's like, introduce me. It's the doctor. I don't give a fuck.
I know. It's fucking crazy. You see, like, 6 people before you even see them, and then they kind of breeze in
Yeah,
and breeze out. Most of them, that is. I
right.
have a couple that are just our primary care physician
Hmm.
booked me for 90 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, he's amazing, and
That's
he's constantly, like, studying and learning new
oh
things,
god.
and he's
That's great.
quite the rock star, yeah.
Mm. See, like that means a lot to me when they actually look you in the eye and not just at their iPad and shit. And then when they're just like, you know what I mean? Like that's the thing that and I've had that too, where like I've gone in, I've had like, stomach. My friends all know, like, but because I've probably talked about it in like nonstop, or whatever, but I've had stomach issues for years. And every time I go in, I can tell immediately if the guy actually gives a shit or knows anything on how long he may. Because otherwise, they're just like, get out of
They're
here, you
just
pussy.
waiting for you to get
Yeah,
out, and if you read, like so now on all of these doctors, you have the My Chart, right? So it's like
yeah,
you have because they can't, like, send you anything because of HIPAA, so you get all your whatever, and they all have to write, like, a description of you, and so I went through some horrible medical things a couple of years ago, as you know, and I'm
yes.
okay now, but
Thank
it
God.
was
Yeah,
really rocky,
right.
and, when I read all the doctor's descriptions, they all say, "A very pleasant, 63," and then I was 63-year-old woman, and I'm like, is that a diagnosis?
That's a signal to that you can be helped.
Somebody
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah. They're like, I mean, and I think that's what it is too. Like, there's no way that because I've definitely been a disgruntled, not as disgruntled as Luigi, obviously, but I've definitely been to that level of like because I have United Healthcare. So when
Oh god,
that happened, I was like, yeah, that checks out.
I get it.
I was like,
I totally get it.
yeah, I was like, that makes so much sense to me. And then when I found out he was Italian, I was like, this is the proudest of being Italian I've ever felt my entire life.
No, you can say it as a
It's a
joke,
joke.
but
It's a joke. Yeah. But no,
I
like,
mean, the guy gunned down another human being, and that's part of another Dystopia
it
Tonight topic, which is
absolutely.
it happened today. I don't know when this is airing,
Right.
but, we had another school shooting today.
Oh,
Yay!
that's right.
And
Yeah.
it's like as much as we all understand what motivated Luigi, and I think this
Yes.
is sort of funny. I just had back surgery,
Hmm.
and for him, that was like a major turning point, and
Yeah.
the back surgery kind of went wrong,
Right.
and a lot of things fell apart for poor handsome Luigi, and, it just wasn't a good scene, and he couldn't handle it. He's
No.
quite a fascinating story.
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever had, so much of a crush on, like,
Yeah.
a murderer, a famous murderer in the news,
Thank
like,
God this guy was good looking because if he
yeah,
wasn't, it would have been like this
would've been a
scum.
very
Yeah,
different story.
if he looked uglier than the CEO, that would have been the end of it, and I feel like that's
Yeah,
probably
and
what
I
has been
get
hanging
that
on.
it's funny to sort of, like, be go Luigi, and a lot of people are doing that, but I kinda think we have to also keep our bearings that we don't wanna encourage people to pick
Absolutely.
up
Yeah.
guns
Murder
and
is still
shoot.
bad.
Yeah, murder is still bad. Last time I checked. Let me check my
Yeah,
watch.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
murder
yeah, is mur
still bad?
yeah.
Like
Ask ChatGPT. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
but it's one of those things that, like, I was talking about it with Fugelsang, the other day. We were talking about just it has to be within the
funny.
context of, this guy, the reason why people don't feel bad is not because we're okay with murder now, it's just because it's a guy who willingly took an AI towards people's healthcare with a 90% error rate. So, like, we don't feel bad because it's like, well, I feel bad for the kids. The kids don't have any idea their dad's a piece of shit or what
I
his
feel
dad
bad
does.
for the kids, and I also think we don't live in the everybody gets to decide who gets the death penalty
Right.
world. I feel like that might be bad for you and I in other
Yeah.
realms, and, but I understand that it is a frustration that
Mhm.
is shared by many people, and let's face it, our medical system is embarrassing.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I was once in Italy, and I was at dinner in, the city of Siena,
Oh.
and I cracked a tooth,
Mhm.
and, my Italian friends took me to the emergency room, and there was a fucking oral surgeon on duty
Wow.
who basically, extracted my tooth. I never saw a bill.
Oh my god. That's
I had,
beautiful.
like,
And you came
emergency
home?
surgery. I
Why
never
did you
wanted
Yeah, why did you come back? That's
to.
crazy. No, I
They have
know.
a fascist, president too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, 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 I know. It's
Meaning
like
I thought of it.
yeah, there's like my
It's
friend.
kind of growing everywhere, that fascism thing.
Oh, I know. It's really weird how, like, it's
Hilarious. I think it's a great topic
yeah.
for a
No,
comedy podcast.
absolutely. Yeah, no, it is crazy that, like, it is one of those things where, like, I'll be like, "Oh, man, I wanna come live with, whoever my friends somewhere else," and they're like, It's creeping up over here too, guy." Like,
Well, I heard this thing, and I can't remember where it was, but it was probably on NPR because that is the soundtrack of my life, although I kind of mute it
Mhm.
during some of the more newsy programs.
Sure.
But they said that basically what's happening is it was because of COVID, and COVID shut down everybody's economy,
Yeah.
and it hurt every single company, and all of the supply chains got hurt, and people lost their jobs, and companies folded and shrank,
Right.
and since it was one of these weird things where it should have united us because we all suffered at the exact same thing simultaneously,
Yeah.
which very rarely happens. But the problem was it was a bad thing. So it wasn't like we all got massages like at the same minute. It was
Right.
COVID, wreaked havoc on our social lives, our mental health, our economies, our wider economies, our private, our personal economies. And that when stuff like that happens, what does very well is fascism.
Yeah.
Because what fascism does is it gives you somebody to blame, and you're very angry and you want somebody to blame. Let them be brown. And you
Right.
just kind of like, it's so easy to just like, or let them live in cities and be
Yeah. Right. The
liberals,
elitists. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The
libertarians.
Illuminati and the yeah.
All us where we do it. And or I do it. I don't know
Mhm.
where you go. But anyway, so that when you hear it like that, it's bone chilling
Yeah.
because you kind of feel like, "Oh, this hasn't played itself out yet."
Right.
Like, we're right in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
We are binge watching the worst show that ever has been
Yeah,
made.
absolutely. I had a joke in my act when Trump first got elected about everybody comparing it to like the season finale of America, and like we had a favorite black character, they killed him off after 8 years, yada yada. And then, but now it's like this is crazy because it's the fucking reboot that no one asked for.
Nobody asked
Yeah,
for it.
and the cast of characters they're picking is fucking insane. Like, so
Yeah, the original showrunner is gone. Like, let's know that. And they brought in some team of 23-year-olds.
yeah,
And they brought in all their friends, and
absolutely.
they're just kind of like I've been watching when I was recovering. This is sort of maybe tangentially related, but when I was recovering from my back surgery,
Right.
I got it in September, spinal
Hmm.
surgery, really fun stuff.
Yeah, you've been really running through all the medical treatments lately.
Right. But anyway, I was recovering and I started watching Prison Break, and I had no idea why. I just
Oh
kind
yeah,
of like had never seen it, and I got so into
it's
it,
a
and it
great show.
really like helped me.
Hmm.
But after season 3, it tanks.
Oh
Like
really?
I'm
I didn't
now
know
in
that.
season 4, and I'm like, wait, we're not even near a prison.
Oh no, I didn't make it to season. That's oh,
Panama, and then suddenly we're in Chicago.
oh,
Like, what's going
oh
on
my
in this?
god,
It's just totally unraveled, and I
that
don't know if I
sucks.
should keep trying
Right.
or if I should just walk away and know that I had the best of Prison
That
Break.
sounds a lot like it was like I mean, I don't know, The Walking Dead's on its 38th season or some shit. But like
Yeah,
after like the first few seasons, you were like, where are the zombies?
zombies, right?
Like
We
what
want
the
our
fuck?
principle.
Yeah,
Isn't
exactly.
this about like that?
Yeah.
And then you're like, what?
People have a habit now of selling us a thing and then pulling the rug out from under us and not giving us the thing we bought. Like it'll give it to us
Oh,
for a little bit and then without warning, it's fucking gone.
it's just
Yeah.
gone, and you're kind of like, wait, what am I doing here with this thing?
Yeah.
Uh,
So
it's
I have to pick your brain about something because
okay.
I
Go
got
ahead.
yeah, I got so one of my close friends is a comedy producer, and when the election, you know, happened like a couple days afterward, she just texted me out of the blue and was just kind of like, "Hey, you know," she's like, "This is probably like a dumb question, but I'm just kind of asking in general." She's like, "But what the fuck happened to like comedians to our here?" Like she's like, "Why does it feel like so many comedians voted Trump, right?" And or feel like they're going to the right. And I wound up like I was just going to answer her really quickly with something whatever, but I literally wound up like breaking it down. And I'm curious what your opinion of my assessment is and if you think it's you because you've been doing this for so long and you're around every comedian ever. But, you know, and I don't know, maybe mine is oversimplifying it. So like, but basically I was like, I went through like the 60s, 70s, and 80s of comedy and comedians
Did you
being
do this in a text to
oh
her?
yeah, I sent this in a text to
That
and then
poor person.
I know I sent this to her and then replied immediately afterward. I'm so sorry this is so long. I could not stop like and she was like, "No, that was fucking like you should send it somewhere."
Brilliant.
But I
Yeah.
was just like, you know, so but basically I did like the whole 60s, 70s, 80s thing where I condensed it where I was like there was a lot of counterculture comedians going on at the time, even the ones who were pretty much clean were still considered counterculture, right? You know, even if they because basically even the way they thought that was family friendly was you know kind of edgy and whatever it was, you know what I mean, in their way. So you know, we could talk, like
Well, I
guys,
think the war in Vietnam definitely, like, polarized the population,
right?
and I don't think you would find someone that was gonna get a job as a comedian that would be like, "Yeah, bomb the North." Like,
Exactly, exactly. Because I was like, you know,
it
there
was
was
wrong,
yeah,
the war was wrong, whereas now we have these wars, but the wars are a little more
right.
complicated.
Right. Smothers Brothers,
Or
David Steinberg, you know, Robin Williams was doing his thing too, but George Carlin, you know, but all those guys to various degrees had that kind of thing. And then, you know, and then in the 80s, there was like this, um, you know, obviously the comedy boom, right? And then every comedian was handed a sitcom. Well, almost every comedian was handed
my
one.
god, they literally did one set, and they just got on a plane, a car picked them up at the, like, the cellar
Oh,
or whatever, and
kills me.
took them to JFK,
Yeah,
and they went off and they got a sitcom, and
exactly.
that yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
just
it
sort of
was
like
that, if I could get a time machine and just go,
2
I
of
would,
them were actually decent.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And like I was saying, like I don't remember a time when I was a kid where a TV show was not helmed by, you know, Brett Butler, Tim Allen, Drew Carey, Paul Reiser,
Right.
Jerry Seinfeld, you know,
Well,
all these amazing dudes and got and women and stuff. But anyway, so the 80s
yeah,
did that kind of thing, right? There was a comedy boom, and then it died down in the 90s, and then nobody was getting shit from anybody. Comedy looked like it was dwindling. The comedy clubs closed, and then like late 90s early 2000s you had the Daily Show, which you created, which I want to get into and everything, but then
I've
you
heard
also
of
had what'd you say? Yeah,
I
I
said
heard.
I've
Yeah, just you know, not influential to me at all.
heard
Just a smidge, but like you know, you had Bill Maher, who had his show, who had Politically Incorrect on Comedy Central
right,
before
they
he went
sort
to
of
ABC.
stepped out of prime time into, like, the fringes.
Yeah, and then Lewis Black, and then all those guys who were doing, that kind of comedy, political comedy and all that other kind of stuff, and commenting on social issues and stuff. And then, a slow comedy, a bit of a comedy boom happened after that. But here's what I think. I think, no comedians weren't getting TV shows or sitcoms anymore, but they were getting attention for opinions in the news. And then the left, the liberal side of the aisle, realized satire and comedy had some kind of an impact, and I think largely because of the Daily Show. But I think that influenced stand up and comedy in a way where they were like, "Hey, look, we're not getting TV shows and any of that kind of shit, but if we
Well, I think you're forgetting something
okay,
huge, which has
please,
giant impact on what you're talking about,
yeah,
which is the internet. The internet
right,
emerged as this place where anybody could do comedy. You
sure,
didn't have to have a manager, an agent. You didn't need to get booked. You didn't need a booking agent. You just needed to have a voice and go. And with the advent of the internet, things became, by definition, more polarized
mhm,
because you don't get eyeballs by being sort of like waffly.
right.
You can't be kind of in the middle and go viral. You have to go strong, go big, and be out there.
Oh, that's a
And I
good
think
point.
that yeah, and I think that also somewhere along there is COVID, people don't go out.
Right,
So I think this falls back into my theory about fascism
yeah.
as it pertains to comedians. Comedians lose their lunch.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
you
But
don't get money from posting
right,
unless
well,
you know, you're
yeah,
Joe Rogan and you whatever,
right.
but that's
Well, they
that's
took that
one.
away from us too. For a while, for whatever reason, and I won't even say it was because I think Instagram tried to really heavily compete with TikTok because that was the first time they were talking about banning TikTok was during COVID. So Instagram started paying um people who were, this is before you could buy your check mark, but people who were like legacy verified could get, who were creatives and had a certain number of followers, whatever it was. Like, I was getting paid by Instagram to make reels. That wasn't, I mean, it should have been
Really?
more of an incentive to make more reels, but like at that time I was like, this is pretty great because I don't have
People make money on TikTok too.
oh, okay, there, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, if you have a certain fan base online, you can do very
right.
well, uh, but it's a different game, and
Yeah,
some of the, like, sort of the older comedians, it's you had to be
it's
able to
hard.
adapt.
And it's
Like, and you have
yeah,
to it's a totally different language
right,
to say something in, like, a 60-second reel or whatever it's gonna be.
right.
You have to kinda know how to produce it and edit it, and the younger you are, the more of an advantage you have.
Absolutely,
So
because if
now
you're born in front of a
suddenly
camera, it's natural.
right? And now so suddenly the main voices become really young,
Mm,
and I hate to say it, but some of them just aren't very well informed.
right. No, I completely agree. But do you think, like, going back even a little bit more, do you my thing is I feel like they comedians were still like basically like, always still the bastard children of Hollywood. You know what I mean? That very very rarely accepted. When they are let in the door, it's on a short leash, and if they fuck it up, they're kind of outside the door or whatever. But I
Oh,
think and this could be like a weird thing, but I think, you know comedians, I didn't see a lot of comics on CNN or NBC or any of the quote unquote, what people think are the liberal stations, as opposed to whatever. But what I think conservatives wound up doing is noticing, especially with the advent of cancel culture shit, is like, oh, we could just entice comedians by giving them credits. You know what I mean? Like, they could be like, you could go on Gret Gutfeld's show, which is Red Eye back in the day, and like, yeah. And I noticed that though too, because if comedians can't get a sitcom or a TV show or whatever it is,
they can become a regular there, and some of them will go, "Well, these people are paying me."
exactly. So do you think
So,
that had an effect on more right leaning, quote unquote right leaning comedy, or people that are
I think that definitely the if you're more right-leaning,
Mhm.
there's definitely more outlets for you, I
Right,
believe.
right, right, right.
Because also, right after the election, I forget what the number was, but MSNBC, like, lost, like, 2/3 of its viewership in, like, one day,
Mhm.
and when CNN brought in their latest, whatever CEO or whoever it was, they made an absolute, like, declaration that they were going to be much wider, that they were gonna and so now you see so
Right.
many right-wing people on their panels, another reason I
Yeah.
can't watch it, and they had the other night we were watching it, and they brought on Ted Cruz to talk about something, like, totally, like, in left field, and I was just like,
Right.
"You people have sold your soul to the devil,"
Right.
and so I think that especially now in a we're gonna be the we need the
Oh,
resistance.
absolutely.
We
Yeah, totally.
need the comedy resistance more than we ever have had it.
Mhm.
I just don't know where it appears
Yeah, me
because,
neither.
I mean, it appears, I guess, on YouTube
Yeah.
and
It's all these niche spaces, and it really is one of those things of like you said, like with the internet and how divided everything is, and it's very like everything broke up into different factions. So it's very hard to be like, is there any one person anybody's listening to? You have to cross. uh I don't want to say crossbreed, you know what I mean, but you have to have your guy
I
go on.
think they're all listening to her to that "Call Her Daddy" girl.
They are. They really are. That's the
Yeah, they are.
craziest shit, but it is really popular.
It's huge,
Yeah.
and so you just don't even know where that comes from, like, she's adorable, it's
Yeah.
great, I'm super happy, but it's just kind of, like, interesting.
Yeah, it is, and then sometimes it's just like, do people wanna veer off and get away from, like, the typical whatever? Like, I think that most people won't watch something if they think it immediately leans in a certain way, which is why everybody kinda tries to cloud it. But the worst part about it too is there's this thing of like, Bill Maher continuously does this now, and he's a guy that I think we've talked about it before too, but he's a guy that I definitely watched Politically Incorrect when I was younger, loved 2 of his stand-up specials, Be More Cynical and Victory Begins at Home. That was in 2004. I think
Yeah, he was great, he made sense,
yes,
and then somewhere along the way, he got really angry.
he did.
Yeah, and I think that when he gets angry, you don't I'm just sort of like, "Wait, you had me before you had made that, like, crazy turn?"
Mhm.
And now I'm not with you, Mr. Libertarian.
Yeah.
Like, stop, leave the liberals alone. We just lost a horrible battle. I watched his show like the Friday after election night with a friend of mine in LA, and I had to leave the room.
Yeah.
I was because I hadn't really ever it hadn't come out. Like after the election, I was so stunned and depressed that I almost didn't move for like, 2 days. I just was paralyzed. It was
Right.
this really weird phenomenon. And then I just, started coming back to life. And my friend was like, "Oh, let's watch Politically Incorrect and or Real Time
Real
as
time,
well."
real time. Yeah, yeah. And then I almost went with you on that one too, and I was like, yeah.
I know.
I was like nodding. I'm
'Cause
like,
when I started The Daily Show,
mhm.
when I was recruited to start a daily
Right,
show
right.
for Comedy Central, the reason was that Politically Incorrect was leaving to go to ABC, and Comedy Central needed something to replace it, so in my
Oh,
mind,
wow.
it will always be,
Yeah, politically incorrect. It's the
Politically
same thing.
Incorrect.
Like
Yes.
except, he doesn't have Richard Simmons on with like, you know what I mean? Like it got a little bit more serious than it was, I think, on politically incorrect.
Yeah, Politically Incorrect was more of a party.
Absolutely, totally, and that's what made it really, really fun too, because this the absurdity of
It was
having like,
fun. It
oh,
was so absurd, and yet all these I hate now that it's just 2 panelists.
oh,
It's
me
like,
too.
this is just boring, and I have so many critiques about that show that, they're too inside baseball, but there's things that I see. Uh, okay, so, for example, every, element of the set that's behind him is horizontal, so whenever there's a shot of him, it looks like he's been impaled by a pipe. The other thing is when
Oh,
he does his stand-up,
yeah,
he plays to the crowd. There's maybe 100 people in the studio.
right,
He refuses to acknowledge the camera.
right,
The truth of the matter is that the camera is me. The camera is your audience at home. You
yeah,
don't have to stare at the camera maniacally,
mhm,
but every once in a while, you have to look at the camera and let it know that you're there
right.
and that I know that you know that you're there, and he completely ignores it, and it drives me out of my mind. It just does. It's like, "Ah, let me get my hands on that. I wanna fix the set, and I just wanna have a conversation with him about eye contact."
Yeah.
And I feel like he'd be like, "Fuck
Oh,
you.
yeah.
I don't wanna do that kind of pandering show, but what it comes out of it is just a guy that won't look at me, and I almost feel like, "I'm so upset that I slept with you."
Yeah.
Oh, wait, did I just have I traveled in time back to my 20s.
Oh my god, that is something else. Holy shit.
No eye contact.
No eye contact. That seems like a Bill Maher thing. Like he's so it's crazy to me, and what I keep seeing over and over again whenever he even on his podcast, which I try to avoid as much as humanly possible, but sometimes he has people on there that I actually like. So I'm like, I really
Right.
like this person.
I don't think I've ever seen an episode, I just don't wanna
Just
I get that. Yeah.
do you good because it is just it'll break you. It infuriates me.
Don't break me, is that a threat or a promise?
I what we'll cut that out. So there, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I love
No,
that.
that was good. It'll so no, but like so he, he does this thing consistently where it just comes off. I wish somebody would just say, dude, you're coming off really wildly insecure, which I always felt he kind of was. Like whenever he would talk about you guys in the press, like back in the day, like with the Daily Show, he kind of like you could tell he hated the question or he didn't want to be asked about how you
Hated
guys were
it.
doing. And
Well, he came on the Jon Stewart show.
oh,
We had 2 versions of the Jon Stewart show. We had one version that was at MTV,
mhm,
which was just so much fun and adorable
yeah.
and great and, like, one of the most fun times of my life. And then we got syndicated by Paramount, and we had 9 months of just a totally painful slow decline.
Oof.
And, Bill Maher came on as a guest, and he was mic'd, and the director in the booth said, "Wait, he's criticizing our show," and she fed the mic into our headsets,
Oh shit.
and he was saying, "This is like a crappy high school glee club production. I've never been around anything that's so unprofessional." And
Wow.
so I said to my director, whose name was Beth McCarthy, whose name is Beth McCarthy, I said, "I want you to take camera 5, and I want you to take it behind the desk and the seats where he will be sitting, and I want you to train it on his bald spot. And I want you to cut to it as much as
Oh, I
makes
love you.
sense."
Oh my god, that is fucking hilarious.
He's gonna come after me now. No,
Yeah,
he's really smart.
what
Like,
a
the thing is,
dick.
I agree with a lot of things that he says. It's
Oh.
just when I don't, I really don't.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh my god, what a
And
fucking
there's
dick though.
kind of yeah, there's kind of yeah. Can you
There's
imagine? I'm on the
there's
show with a mic, you're just insulting
I
what's going on there. So later on when The Daily Show happened and, especially once John was there, I'm
mm,
sure he was bitter as all fuck. Why are you bitter as all fuck? You have a show on HBO you've had for what, 25 years? Like,
yeah.
be happy.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I don't like there's this old I know there's this like golden rule of comedians not shitting on other comedian type of thing, and I think that also comes back to like the thing what I said about comedians being the bastard children of Hollywood, because I think at the end of the day, all we kind of have, or we feel like all we have, is that world of comedy and each other, and we always go back to that basement spot, right? So in our heads, you don't
That's
normally do that, right? Is that like a okay, fair assessment? But like sometimes I just wish like I would see like Oliver or any of those dudes, because you can tell like Colbert doesn't like it. You know what I mean? Like they don't like each other. So you can kind of tell
right.
there's tension there. But I don't even think the other late night guys like it's this weird thing of like he's such a why are you such a dick? Don't get it. But I don't
I
know.
think it's part of his persona, and I
Right.
think he just seems like he's over it. He's over it all. It's a miracle to me that he's still doing his show. It's like
Yeah.
you don't seem to wanna be there. He's always like, "Oh, on the new rules. Let's go. Come on. Somebody
Absolutely.
stick that set through my head." Like,
Oh my god, I'm not going to be able to see that show now and not think of what is it, The Omen, when he gets the photograph and it's a thing going through somebody and he's like, that's the next victim. Oh my god, that's fucking great. So let me ask you, so I want to know basically everything, and I'm sure you've talked about this in a certain sense, but just for me and for my audience in general, what was your impetus to even get into show business? Was it always a passion of yours, or did you have something? Because I always like to know if somebody was younger, what were they going for, and how did they veer into this?
No, it's funny because I'm actually funny, I can do my plug. I'm writing a memoir right now,
Yes,
and
you
it's
are.
called Almost Funding My Life in Late Night Comedy, and I actually have a literary agent who's asked me for
Beautiful.
15,000 more pages. It's a lot of pages. But I will say that I was always the funny one.
Mhm.
Like, I was the funny one in junior high. I had, my first writing partner was, still friends, is she's still a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Jeannie Altschuler, and Jeannie and I used to write, satires, musical comedy satires of our families, and we wrote them longhand in Day-Glo, spiral notebooks,
That's fantastic.
and I remember one thing, which was, we were in chemistry class in probably the beginning of 7th grade, and we were learning about, the word organic, and what the science teacher said was that basically organic meant anything that had ever been alive. Now, what you need to know about my mother, Lorraine Smithberg, is she was so far ahead of the curve when it came to organic
Right.
that we started, like, eating organic food, like, so far before anyone knew what it was.
Wow.
I hated it. It just was like all I wanted was Wonder Bread and Yodels, and all I got was, like, whole grain, yeastless bread that looked like biscotti. I'd be embarrassed of my sandwich. But anyway, I have a younger brother whose name is Nick,
Right.
and, in those days, he was Nicky, and in our play, my family and Jeannie are sitting around the table, and my mother is serving my brother, who has passed on, as our dinner, and when I tell my mother that I can't eat my brother,
Right.
she says, "Relax, it's organic," because it was something
That's
that had once been alive.
oh, that's great.
And in 1972, which would be later that year,
Mhm.
uh, my dad took a sabbatical, and my family, my brother and my mother, my father and I went to Europe for 7 months, and it
Wow.
was pretty incredible,
Mm.
and,
And how old are you?
I was 12,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay,
it
cool.
changed my life forever,
Right.
and it basically told me that when I got to college, I wanted to do a semester abroad. Like, I knew that when I was 12. Who even knew what that was?
Right.
But anyway, back we rented for the 7 months a Renault 12, a Renault Douze, and we drove all over Scandinavia and Amsterdam, Italy, France, which is incredible trip.
Mm.
And in the back of the car, I invented a character. And that character's name was Fraise des Bois, which means strawberries of the woods.
Okay.
And basically, he was from Texas, and he had a song, Fraise des Bois, mes petites fraises des bois, them little phrases that grow on the phrase bush. I always knew that I was supposed to be a Frenchman. You can tell Parmon French accent. Anyway, so
That's so
there was
good.
something going on there.
Oh my
But
god.
like in high school, nothing really ever happened. Jeannie and I took a class in comedy,
Mhm.
but it was way too theoretical. It wasn't what I thought it was gonna be, but we just loved being funny. We loved comedy. We listened to Steve Martin and,
Yeah.
we just that stuff changed our lives, and
Right.
2000-Year-Old Man, and so we knew that we loved comedy, but I never knew, and so when I ended up doing a semester abroad in Italy,
Mhm.
and I became fluent in Italian, and when I got out of school, I got a job working for Italian television in New York,
Whoa.
and somewhere along there, I saw Late Night with David Letterman,
Wow.
and as I describe it, it wasn't an entertainment experience, it was a calling.
Right.
I saw this show, and it was like things were glasses were cracking, and, like, opera was playing, and I was like, "Oh my god, I have to be a part of this, like, nobody knows this is my brain."
Right.
And it would take me 2 years and then happen completely accidentally,
Hmm.
but I would get that job, and the reason I would get it was because what I was doing for Italian TV the last year I was there was I was the United States Bureau for a 6-hour live show called Domenica in Sunday at Home,
Wow.
institution in Italy.
Hmm.
And there were 150 people working in Rome, and there was one person in New York, and it was me, and I was covering the whole United States.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and I was traveling all over the country doing satellite broadcasts, and Gina Lollobrigida was a correspondent, and I interviewed celebrities.
Wow.
But then the Italians started getting really fixated on what was called Americana, and basically, I was sending swimming babies, nuns who raised miniature horses, karate chopping grandmothers to Rome. Guys that got in like sleeping bags with venomous
Oh my
rattlesnakes,
god.
send them over the pole during a hurricane. And somewhere along there, I crossed paths with this woman named Darcy Hetrich who had been at Letterman and now was at the Tonight Show. And she's like, Madeline, what do you do? And it was because I was of the swimming babies that when Letterman called her and goes, yeah, we need a researcher. She said, oh, I have this perfect woman for you. She works for Italian TV.
Wow.
And I got the job.
Holy
Like
shit.
I had sent so many resumes in and
Right.
just like nothing was happening. And I went to the show and I saw my future boss, Robert Morty, and I looked at him and he was on the studio floor and he was just having the time of his life. And I said, I want to be him.
Wow.
And then I would become him because I would get promoted to segment producer. And then I was like, wait, can I ask for something better?
Oh my god, that's fantastic. So wait, when you got promoted to segment producer though, I mean, was that like, how much of what you were doing went into being a segment producer, or did you learn by watching what everybody else is like? What were the skills that you acquired to become a segment producer after that?
I was doing it. The truth is I did all the human interest, and I would
Okay.
scour the country, to find people that had comedic potential, but were not aware of it,
Mm,
because I couldn't be trying to be funny.
right.
So I was booking, the guy with electrically heated clothing and the potato chip lady who worked in a potato chip factory inspecting potato chips, and she had a collection of potato chips that looked like stuff. And Deb Tanner, the baking lady, and Kmart the magician, and,
Oh my
like,
god.
it was said that I had the world's weirdest Rolodex, and at that time, Morty had been promoted to executive producer, so there was a segment producer,
Okay.
but I did every single thing except write the intro. So when I
Oh,
eventually got promoted, I started doing some celebrity segments too, but I still was
right.
doing my stuff, and I was doing all the cooking, and I
Wow.
was, I was booking music, which was super fun,
Hmm.
and I was doing the chefs and the music, I could go see any band, I could go to any restaurant. I mean, it was crazy
Jesus.
boondoggle, like, it was so fun, and when you talk about, like, something being relevant in the moment,
Yeah.
late night was the thing. I mean, I would bring T-shirts with me every time I traveled, then I would get bumped up to first class for a
Oh
late night
my
T-shirt,
god.
and,
That's
just
incredible.
really yeah, it was amazing, and I always describe it as having served as my graduate school,
Mm,
because the standards on Late Night with David Letterman, I'm sure later on Late Show, but I left
mhm.
before but were so high that my joke was always that the people in Greenwich, England, set their clock by when the late night audience was loaded in. Because it'd be 5:30.
That's great. Oh my god.
It's 5:30, time
Yeah.
to set the Greenwich clock.
I so
Like
I mean, that's so fucking cool though, because whenever anybody talks about Late Night with David Letterman, they talk about kind of like flying at the seat of their pants, like throwing shit against the walls and seeing what stick. So
in the
in the
beginning.
beginning, yeah, exactly. So like when they were doing that kind of stuff and you were there, like did it feel like that to you, that they were just kind of like, we're on the precipice of something that's not being done anywhere else in television,
Yeah.
and we can
It
that's like
it was amazingly exciting. I was there for the monkey cam. I was there
oh
for,
my
like
god, that's
we did it
fantastic.
on I had a guest whose name was Doctor Ted Borges, and his slogan was, "Your feet are gorgeous." And he was a podiatrist who had a collection of celebrities' shoes, And I had brought him to New York, and he had been bumped like 3 times.
Wow.
Just we ran out of time,
Yeah.
and basically the most famous celebrity shoe in his collection was Jamie Farr from MASH. It's such a very impressive collection.
Oh my
So
god.
we did a specialty show, or we did the entire show from the Milford Plaza Hotel.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of the Milford Plaza had seen better days.
Yeah.
And, we set up in a suite, and we had booked, Carly Simon, because Carly
Oh.
Simon has stage fright.
Mhm.
So she would do very well in this, hotel room because there was no audience, and then it was Hunter S. Thompson
Wow.
and my Ted Borges, Your Feet Are Gorgeous, and the writers had set it up so that there was a closet in the hotel room where it was supposed to be the green room,
Right.
and it was the most surreal thing ever because in that closet was Carly Simon, Hunter S. Thompson, and Dr. Ted Borges, Your Feet Are Gorgeous, sitting in a closet.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Oh,
so many amazing things,
that's
so many amazing
incredible.
things, and, so, yeah, the biggest thing that changed when I got promoted to segment producer was that I now had to write my own introductions, and I had to stand in for Dave
Hmm.
during rehearsals. Now, I had been standing in for Dave during a lot of rehearsals anyway.
Right.
Nobody really got or appreciated the beauty of the human interest like I did, and so the other segment producer was like, "Yeah, you have at it, like, I don't know what you're going for here."
That's fantastic.
And so I would do that, but then I get promoted, and now comes the 10th anniversary special, and this is, like, huge. It's like the show's been on for 10 years. It's a
Right.
big round number, and we book Radio City Music Hall, and we're gonna do this giant 10th anniversary show, and Bob Dylan is gonna be on, with an all-star band,
Right.
and I get one night, everybody I'm not in the I maybe wasn't a segment producer yet, but I think I was. I think I was because I was writing the intro, but
Right.
anyway, I wasn't in the inner sanctum yet, though. I would make it to the inner sanctum, but at this point, I still was nice, happily on the outskirts,
Right.
and, one of the producers, Barbara Gaines, comes running down the hall, and she's like, "Dave wants
That's a good
border
Barbara Gaines
collie."
impression.
That's my Barbara I love Barbara Gaines so much.
That's so
"Dave wants border collies herding sheep." And I go, "What?" "On the anniversary show," and she disappears.
good.
'Cause I used to, I found all these guests, there was no internet yet,
Right.
and I basically read, like, 35 tiny local papers a day.
Holy shit.
I had all these weird magazines like Pork Monthly. The most not sort of well-known legitimate magazine was, I think, Yankee Magazine and Texas Monthly, but every
Wow.
other than that, they were all kinda sketchy.
Right.
But I would cold call every features reporter in America
Mhm.
at every, like, local TV station, and I'd be like, "Hi, this is Madeleine Smithberg from Late Night with David Letterman, and, I'm the human interest producer, and I just want to introduce myself to you,
Right.
and here's my number so that if you have a guest that you think could be a funny guest for Dave, you let me know." And I got a couple of guests that way. I got the Bee People, who were amazing.
I I've seen those clips. I know the bee people.
I had to get an extra seat for the hive. He had taken these bees and glued them together in a hive, and then he had he was like 90, and he had a tape recorder, and he would go, "It's the sound of the bees in the actual hive," and he'd push the button, it would just go, "Bzzz." That's like the whole act.
Oh my god.
The best part of it was you couldn't write this, right? Like,
Right.
you couldn't if you came up with it, people would be like, "Okay, whatever." Like, these people wrote comedy better than you, I, or any comedy writer that's ever written.
Right, right.
So but in addition to all the cold calling and the reading, and I called science centers, and I scouted state fairs. So one year,
Wow.
I'm at the State Fair of Texas in Dallas with a big statue of Tex who's waving at you, and, I'm not eating fried pork chops.
Right.
I never did that. even though it was highly recommended.
Everybody,
So,
yeah.
but I'm at the State Fair of Texas, and I see this exhibit. It's really small. It's just like a piece of grass, and there's like a fence, and the sign is Border Collies herding sheep. And there's this man, and he's got like 3 dogs and like 6 sheep, and he like just whistles, and the dogs like herd the sheep and do whatever they want them to do. And I'm
Right.
just like, Dave would love this. So I bring him to New York, and we end up we have to source the sheep locally because we couldn't fly sheep, but the dogs could fly on the plane. So I get these sheep locally, and they don't really get along with the dog. But so during our rehearsal, the sheep, we're trying it. We've got more sheep. We end up, cutting it down, but we have like 5 sheep, and I think we ended up with 2. But the dogs, the bit at this point was that the dogs were going to herd the sheep out of the studio onto the elevator.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that was the entire bit.
Right.
Across the hall was the local news studio, and that was Live at 5 with Sue Simmons. But they actually started going live at like noon
Okay.
because we just did local news updates,
Right.
and rehearsal was at 2, so they were, they were on the air. The sheep come out of our studio, and they run across the hall into the Live at 5 studio. Sue Simmons is
Oh
reading
my god.
traffic jam on the, TV, and all of a sudden there's all these sheep just leaping, and she just goes, "Oh, Dave." So
Holy shit.
it was hilarious, but so it was a very successful,
Ugh.
segment, and apparently Dave wanted to have it on the 10th anniversary
Oh
special.
my god. I've seen clips of that 10th anniversary. Is that the Dylan one where like no one could hear him?
Oh, he refused. We did like a Rolling Stone, he refused to rehearse.
Why?
He had a down jacket, and he was walking around like a crab. He was all, like, down on the ground, and he was, like, crab walking in a down jacket inside. He refused to rehearse, and when the show went live, he was doing one tempo, and the 18 members of the, like, all-star band were all doing another tempo.
Oh
It
my
was
god.
hair-raising.
That must have been amazing. Was Dave pissed or was he like, "This is great"?
I don't think Dave cared as much about that. I think Paul Schaefer probably was just like, "What
Oh,
the hell is going on?"
right.
But Dylan's just like, "Once upon a time, dance so fine through the bones, diamond to come," and the rest of the band is going, "Once upon a time, it's so fine." I was just like, "What's happening?"
Oh,
But I was so distracted with my own
yeah.
situation. So the couple of weeks, like 2 weeks before the show is to happen, the cue card guy, who's a really good friend of mine, Kevin Gay, he would end up like running the Paramount Network. He was at Nickelodeon for a million years.
Wow.
Brilliant guy, nice guy, great guy.
Sweet.
He said, "Okay, for Radio City Musical, we have to do 12-foot cue cards." So we've gotten these
Holy
gigantic
shit.
pieces of cardboard, and we have to use a roller like you would use for painting,
Wow.
and we need to like do giant letters. So I'm gonna need your intro for Border Collie herding sheep by Friday. This was like Monday. I have never been so like paralyzed.
Oh, wow.
It was like the most epic case of writer's block that has ever occurred in the history of the world, because I would sit at my IBM Selectric typewriter,
Mhm.
and I would just my fingers wouldn't move.
Oh
I
my
was
god.
so daunted by the fact that every letter I wrote was gonna be like, 4 feet high,
Right.
that I just couldn't. It was the most stressful thing I've ever been through.
Good god. What when you're in that situation and you do have the writer's block thing, do you just force yourself through it? Like, "Fuck it, like, I got a deadline, I gotta make it," and, like, how do you? Because that's a great, like,
I
thing.
don't remember, quite honestly.
Right.
It's a big giant black hole, because all I remember is sitting there and nothing
Mm,
would come, and then next thing I know, I'm in Radio City Music Hall,
holy
and,
shit.
like, it's all happening. But it was, I just like, to this day, when I talk about it,
Mhm.
I get like really bad PTSD.
Oh, I'm sure any kind of writer's block like that in the moment when you need it most
Need it.
is
Like
like,
nobody cared. It
yeah,
was just like, "We need your fucking intro. What are you doing,
yes,
Madeline?" And I think finally it just came out and I did
right,
it. But I think before that happened, I turned it into this ginormous mountain.
right. Of course, absolutely. It happens
That to this
without a
day, when
fucking
I,
doubt.
like, talk about it, I'm like, someone's gonna have to, like, get a defibrillator because
I have instances where, like, because I mean, everybody always talks about like you always remember the times you bombed, and you do. But there's times I remember bombing fondly where I'm like, oh man, that was so fucked up. Like I can't believe that happened. Yada, yada. But then any of the bad ones are ones where friends of family members came and I have this thing of like, what the fuck I feel off, whatever the hell it is. To this day, and I wouldn't even
dude,
remember. I feel like I need to apologize. I'm like, I feel like I can
they
feel it.
don't even notice it. The
No,
truth is we do this to ourselves.
100%.
So here's an interesting thing, and it kind of answers one of your questions. So
Mm,
as I was working in comedy, I kind of had the Fraise de Bois thing when I was 12,
right.
but once I, got into comedy,
Hmm.
I never performed.
Oh,
I went out and I saw stand up, I booked comics. I never had any desire to perform ever.
wow.
It was terrifying to me. I couldn't listen to my own answering machine because it's the
Wow.
voice, I couldn't. And I never ever did. I always was, annoyingly, the person at the back of the room. I had like, at the Daily Show, I was sort of the mama of the field department,
Right.
and I loved those meetings. They were collaborative and they were hilarious, and I would, I had a big personality, and I would keep people way too long and just, like, love on them and laugh, 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 and we would come up with just amazing ideas,
That's great.
but I never wanted to perform. It wasn't until COVID. I had moved here to Seattle where I live,
Hmm.
and, my now husband, Sam, had gotten me a gift certificate for a, cooking class for my
Sweet.
first Christmas here,
Hmm.
and it was, the class was knife skills, and 70 minutes into it of just chopping carrots, I was like, "This needs some help," and so I started being stupid
Right, right.
and being funny, I guess,
Mhm.
and at the end of the class, the chef pulled me over and was like, "Have you ever taught cooking?" And I was like, "I tried to teach my son to make a frittata, but it never really took," and he's like, "Well, I run a cooking school in Seattle, and we do corporate team building events, and you have a great personality, and you clearly love food,
Wow.
and we can train you." And so at the age of 60, I pivot and I leave fucking TV and comedy and producing behind me happily,
Wow.
and I dive into being at the bottom of another field, and it's a much more dangerous field physically.
Yeah.
I'm burning myself, I'm cutting myself,
Right.
I'm tripping over stuff and dropping trays of hot food, like, it was ugly. So I do that, and then Sam proposes, and we're
Nice.
planning a wedding on a beach in Mexico,
Ooh.
and the wedding was supposed to be March of 2020,
Right.
and my Blue Ribbon Cooking closed in February because we had the first death here in Seattle
Wow.
and, of COVID,
Yeah.
and then, my wedding got canceled, and we all lay on the couch, I guess, and watched, Tiger King, and then at a
That was
certain
so
point
good. Simpler
it was
times.
it was good.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point one day, I don't even know what it was like, Sam, come, kitchen, me, make pasta, you, shoot, phone, because we weren't talking that much, we were so depressed.
Right.
I've forgotten my language, and he records me making pasta on my iPhone, and I just plop it up on YouTube, and then the weirdest thing happens. It just kind of like one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and Matt in the Kitchen is born.
Nice.
And all these people who are just bored because it's COVID come out and help me, and they've got all this tech stuff. And I was on, uh, what is this, StreamYard long before.
Long before me. Yeah, absolutely.
Then I ended up getting booked on the Today Show. I did the Today Show 3 times. I became a regular on these
Right.
2 other morning shows. I started doing my own corporate team building events, and I did
Oh,
like 3 Amazon events that I made a lot of money. I had a woman in New York who was helping me get a deck. I sold a TV show that
nice.
never happened, just to remind me
So
how much
good
I hate
though. Yeah.
TV. And then I got a breast cancer diagnosis.
Right. Oh my God. I
So
know.
it's been a little bit of up and down and up and down and up and down and up and
But you
down and
kicked his
up.
fucking ass though, which is just awesome. I mean,
Yes, no, I did,
yeah.
but not to feel sorry for me. The reason I had to have spine surgery is the chemo fucking shrunk my spinal column, and
Oh
it
my God.
was crushing my sciatic nerve to the point where the surgeon said he'd never seen anything like it. My sciatic nerve was flat. And I go, flat like a linguine? And I'm like, I'm a spaghetti girl. I want to toss her around.
I didn't even know that could happen through chemo, by the
I
way, until you
never
told me.
knew.
Like, that was fucking news to me. I didn't know that was a
Who
thing.
knew? Who
Yeah.
knew? Who knew?
Holy shit.
But anyways,
Yeah.
now here I am again reinventing myself,
Right.
and I'm writing the book, which I'm having a lot of fun with,
Yeah.
and I've just shot a pilot for a digital. I do not want to deal with networks
Yeah.
or anybody giving me notes, but my friend has a house in the desert, and it's amazing. And we shot like a proof of concept for a talk show, comedy talk show for women over 50, and it's called Lady Girls.
Beautiful.
And it's hilarious, but it's also meaningful in that our whole goal is to give a sense of community to older women who seem to just be thrown away by society once we're no longer fuckable.
A- Absolutely. No, that's fucking awesome. Can I ask who you had on the proof of concept?
So we had it's me, Carrie Keegan. Now
Ooh.
Carrie was she had the first online talk show ever. It was called No Good TV.
Yeah.
And I met her back in those days, and we've known each other for a long time, and we've always wanted to work together. And I developed a show for her called Carrie Keegan Has Serious Issues.
Oh,
And
that's so
it
great.
was basically, we sold it in the room to NBC Universal, and then it never happened, which seemed to be my track record and my sort of like my
Right,
thing.
right, right.
And I would pitch these shows, produce pilots, produce proof of concept, and then one thing would happen, the executive that bought it would leave, a different executive would come, the
Right.
network would decide they were gonna do true crime instead. It was just
Like there
like,
isn't enough of that shit going around.
I know, we don't need that.
No.
But yeah, so anyway, Carrie and I had sold the show, and then we became friends, and she moved out to Joshua Tree, and I had seen her a couple of years ago when I was in Palm Springs, and when I got my breast cancer diagnosis, something said to me, "I gotta tell Carrie Keegan."
Mm.
And so I texted her. I said, "I don't know how to say this other than I have breast cancer." And she wrote back 2 seconds later, "Oh my God, so do I. I found out 3 days ago."
Holy shit.
Yeah. She was the worst cancer buddy ever because she ended up not needing any surgery, chemo, or radiation.
Wow.
So whatever. But so I so it was Carrie Keegan, me, my really good friend Ann Knudsen, who is an interior designer who did my house in LA,
Sweet.
who has the most incredible, like, she brings joy through like pillows. She's just so talented, and her house is so beautiful that I was visiting her about 6 months ago, and I was like, why don't I shoot here?
Yeah.
And why don't I do something with Ann? And then we brought in Carrie, and then I was like, okay, it's too many blonde white girls. And so my friend Melody Murray, who's incredible,
Mhm.
she worked with me in TV back in the day at Steve Harvey's Big Time, but
Nice.
she's gone on to become a licensed therapist, and she's just written her second book. She's been on the Today Show twice. She's so great, and she knows how to be on camera. And so Melody flew herself
Oh,
from Houston, and Anne and Carrie and me, and, it was pretty magical, and
nice.
yeah, I'll show it to you
Yeah,
when it's
please.
done.
I would love to see
But
this. And what
as I said, we're not trying to sell it to anybody.
That's great.
I'm trying to raise the money, and then figure out a way to distribute it.
And that's
And
the best way to do it right now, because it's like, I mean, I'm bummed. We talked about this, I think ad nauseum for a bit, but it is one of those things where, like, I'm so, I'm such a comedy nerd. I read every fucking comedy book, I knew all this other crap, and I was like, this is what you do. And then when I kind of was, like, this is years ago, but when I was younger, I was going to network meetings and I had stuff that was almost sold and one thing that was, and all this other crap. And then it just immediately died. Like, after COVID, it was like,
yeah,
no
it's
more.
almost like, yeah, no, it's over,
Yep.
it's done,
And I was like,
and I
I was
think
just
it
getting
was
good.
COVID. It's I called it the perfect storm of shit because it really started, like, in 2007, 8, there was a
Mm.
writer's strike, then
Oh,
the economy collapsed, then reality TV came out of the woodworks and just sort of, like, was like kudzu and just, like, devoured the landscape,
yeah.
and quite honestly, what I do is more expensive than that because
Mhm.
live tape, you need, like, cameramen and a studio, and just walking in the doors, $25,000 a day
Wow.
minimum, and it was almost like what I did was suddenly not worth anything, and then
That's
I
rough
just had
one.
one kind of near miss after another, like the Carrie Keegan one, and so I just did, uh, it's, Jet Road Studios Presents. My friend Will Beckton, he worked for Conan for, like, 13 years,
Nice.
and, but we did a pilot together called Yappy Bras for Adult Swim, which was pretty hilarious. It was, like, a bunch of comedians in drag and then a Miss USA Shandy Finnessy, and I tried to make it everything uncomfortable, the lighting was way too bright,
Oh my
I brought
God.
actual, like, guests I would have booked on Letterman, so I had a facer-size lady, and they're all doing, like, face exercises, and we had one similar on Lady Girls, but anyway,
That's fantastic.
um yeah, so Will worked with me on that, and he has this podcast studio called Jet Road.
Hmm.
So about a month ago, he reached out to me and he said, "So my wife Amber and I want to do a series of podcasts that are all pilots for podcast series,
Oh,
and we want you to do one."
nice.
I said, "Well, if they're all pilots, I want to do it about all my failed pilots." And so we called it the Pilot's Lounge, and basically, I had Mark Evan Jackson, who was in 2 of my pilots, and Lauren Weedman, who is just brilliant. I don't know if you know of her, but
No.
she's so brilliant. She does one-woman shows. She's been in a bunch of stuff,
Hmm.
but, she was a correspondent for a bit on The Daily Show, but she spent a lot of
Oh,
time in Seattle, and whenever she does her one-woman shows, she comes up here to, like,
okay.
take out,
I
shake
think
them
I know
out.
who you're talking about. It's very early in the Daily Show, right?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
so fucking funny. She's
Yeah.
just crazy and hilarious. So she and I did this one called The Fifth Hour,
Hmm.
and basically the concept was that this was the 5th hour of a local morning juggernaut
Hmm.
for women, and by the time it comes to the 5th hour, like, everybody's tired and drunk.
That's so good. That's fucking genius.
It was fucking genius, and then the one I did 2 with Mark Evan Jackson, so I talk about them in this podcast, and we took him I had this concept for a show called Ugly American, and it
Mhm.
was for BBC America, and the idea was that you would go around the world as an idiot and just sort of, like, bring shame on our country, but in order to do the proof of concept, we went to this town outside of LA called Artesia, which at the time, I've heard that it's changed, was 100% Indian.
Oh, okay.
And basically, Mark Evan Jackson goes on this mission of discovery to find out why Indian American children are so good at spelling bees. And so he does this by immersion tourism.
Oh my god.
We dressed him up in this, like, totally culturally appropriated outfit. He had, like, shoes that kind of had, like, they looked like, you know, Alibaba
Right, right,
lamb.
right.
And, then he took Bollywood lessons, we got him a matchmaker, he went on a date,
Ooh.
he but we're watching it, we watched it during the podcast, and
Mm.
I was dying. It was so
That's
fucking funny.
see,
It
that's
was
the kind of
just
stuff I miss in TV. You know what I mean? This is one of those things you would be turning the channel and you would see it and you'd be like, "What the hell is this?" And then instantly hooked.
Oh, it was amazing.
That's great.
And then the head of BBC America just told us it wasn't his cup of tea, and I was like, "Do the Brits compare everything to tea?"
Oh, that's great. Oh my
But
god.
anyway, it
So
was but what I felt was like a little bit of, redemption
yeah.
because I hadn't seen this for so many years, and there we are in this studio in LA, and we're watching it, and I have this uncontrollable laughter, and we're just dying, and
Right.
I think I'm gonna vomit or choke or whatever, and I don't care because 'cause I'm having such a good time, and I felt like, "Okay, Madeline, maybe it never saw the light of day, but it exists,
Yeah.
and you made a beautiful little thing."
Yeah. And what's cool about things now with the internet, there are pockets for stuff. You know what I mean? Where if, like what you just used it for, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is, like where things can kind of come back and catch, a different
Your own little thing,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So like it's cool that you have stuff like that that is kind of made and you put all that work into it now because it may find another life somewhere
May
else
n
in some
or
other
it may
form.
not, but it doesn't matter, I still feel proud
Oh,
of the
that's great.
accomplishment,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I
Oh
just
yeah.
was like, "Wow, I made perfect comedy," like, that was
Fucking
perfect
yeah.
comedy,
Hell yeah.
and it was what a fun day,
So when
and
would you did you leave Letterman to go to create the Daily Show at Comedy Central, or
no,
did you
no, 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 no,
no?
no, no, no. I left Letterman because, I had started booking all the chefs,
Okay.
and I basically friends with Julia Child, and I was backstage getting cooking lessons from, all Paul Prudhomme and
Wow.
Martha Stewart and all, like, chefs, and I was just like, "I think there should be a show about food that is entertaining and funny and isn't necessarily like a lesson in cooking, but is more like entertainment."
Yeah.
So, my friend Elise that I was watching the election with, who made me watch Bill Maher, and I had actually sold a show, to Fox. This should have turned me around, but I had an idea for a show, so it was called Offbeat America, and the idea was it was the guests that I was booking on Letterman, but it was going to them.
Oh,
So,
okay.
there was this woman named Frances Gabe, and she had created a self-cleaning house, and it made no sense whatsoever. The floors were slanted, everything was covered in plastic. You flip a switch and water would come out all over the place cleaning it, and she had spent 30 years working on this thing when
Right.
it's just like, "Buy get a maid." Like, "What are you doing, Frances?" So, but I realized that you couldn't really bring it into the studio because you had to go
To the
to
house, yeah.
and so that inspired me, and I went to Jack Rollins, who was Dave's, and Woody Allen's manager.
Oh,
He
wow.
was in Broadway Danny Rose, wonderful man,
Oh, wow.
and I said, "I just want you to know, because 'cause you're the executive producer of Late Night, that I'm gonna go out, I have a show idea, and I'm gonna pitch it." And he said, "Well, why don't you have David be your, executive producer?"
Oh.
And I said, "That's a thing?"
Oh my god.
So Dave became my executive producer, and then Jack Rollins got on an elevator, and this man named Garth Ancier, who was working for Barry Diller at Fox, got on the elevator, and Jack Rollins pitched my show, and next thing I know,
Literally an elevator pitch?
there was an elevator pitch, they exist, and
Fucking
next thing I know, we're having dinner at the Four Seasons, and I'm eating duck with cherry sauce, and I have sold a show. So in my mind, I'm like, "This selling TV shows is so easy." You come up with an idea. Next thing you know, Jack Rollins gets in an elevator, and you're at the Four Seasons eating duck with cherries. Like,
God,
what's the
holy
problem
shit.
here? Well, then Dave hires Mike Ovitz at CAA,
Okay.
and NBC had passed on my show.
Hmm.
So they would have had to go to NBC and gotten an out uh, to do the show at Fox. Nobody cared about my show. Nobody cared about that.
Wow.
But what Mike Ovitz didn't want was that to have Dave be beholden to NBC in any way, shape, or form because they were about to go in for renegotiation, and so my show died.
Wow.
And so
Holy
then
shit.
Elise, my friend who had been my partner on Offbeat America,
Mhm.
said, You get out of there. We're going to start a production company. We're going to do fun shows about cooking and food, And so I gave 6 months notice,
Wow.
and my last night was Johnny's last night. And Elise and I started Half Baked Productions,
Oh, beautiful.
and we ended up shooting a pilot with Kevin Kay, my
Okay.
friend, the cue card guy, who's
Yeah.
now he was the writer. And my friend's husband had just bought a really beautiful camera,
Hmm.
and his name is Phil Abraham, and he would go on to be the DP and then the director of The Sopranos and Mad Men.
Holy shit. This
And
is what I mean when I tell people that you know everyone.
it was crazy. We shot it in the snow one
Oh
March
my God.
afternoon, and we edited together this thing, and it was really funny. And it was called Eating New York, but it wasn't like a cooking show. It was about a show about eating in New York.
Hmm.
Like it was, Instagram
Yeah,
ahead of its time.
sure.
So we end up sending it to MTV. And it somehow, Eating New York ends up on the desk of this woman named Eileen Katz, who's running original programming at MTV. And she's a foodie. And she has this huge stack of the,
Hell yeah.
absurdly large 3/4 inch tapes
Right.
on her desk. And she sees one called Eating New York. And she's a foodie. And she goes, I wonder what this is. So she pops it in her clunky machine.
Hmm.
And she really likes what she sees. And then there's, folded credits in the case, and she takes it out and she sees Late Night with David Letterman. And we get called in
That's amazing.
and to MTV, and she's like, love your tape. We're developing a late night show with a young comedian. He's down in the basement. His name's Jon Stewart.
Oh
And
wow. Holy
so then
I love the down in the base. We have a comedian down in the basement. It's where we
they did. He had like fake clouds on the wall.
Wow.
And they were doing a late night talk show with Jon Stewart. And I had only ever been a segment producer. She said, okay, you've never been a showrunner or an
Mm.
executive producer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a really strong line producer. And that woman is Lori Rich. We're still really good friends. We just had a Jon Stewart show reunion. She was like, if you ever need anything, like
Oh
I'm just like,
wow.
oh my God. And so that's it. So we ended up doing 2 seasons at MTV, then we got syndicated for Paramount, and I told you that it was just like a
Yeah.
long, slow,
Yeah.
horrible death. And then the show went down, and all I wanted to do in life was to become a mother. I wanted to get pregnant. I was like, no. And so the first while I went to Europe
Hmm.
and I came back, and Eileen and Doug basically took me for caviar, and they offered me a job as the executive, like the senior EP of original programming for Comedy Central.
Wow.
And I was like, you guys, I don't want to be an executive. I'm a producer. I'm creative. I can't do politics. Like, I'll suck at it. I
Mhm.
turned it down. Like, can you
That's
imagine?
no, I'm literally like, holy fucking shit. The ball, like, that's crazy. But yeah,
I
that's
turned it
amazing.
down.
Yeah.
So then she takes me out to another lunch in another restaurant. And no, this time Doug is there. And it's another restaurant. And Doug
Hmm.
says, okay, Madeline, I need you to produce a daily show for Comedy Central. And I say, Doug, no way. There is no way that I am doing that. I don't want to be in that business anymore. I've
Right.
been there for, 8 years. There's no interest. I'm trying to have a baby. I don't want to do it.
Hmm.
And he goes off and he starts asking other people. One night, my downstairs neighbor, Liz Winstead, who I have hired as a segment producer for like the last 3 months of the Jon Stewart show, because she didn't tell me she couldn't type. Uh,
Oh my
like, where are
God.
your
I
notes?
fucking can't. Oh, that's so great.
So
Oh,
Liz and I were really good friends, and she had been really hard hit by the cancellation of the Jon Stewart show.
oh.
And we're hanging out one night late with my ex-husband, Jonathan, who's very funny.
Mhm.
And we come up with an idea for a show, and it's sort of like Larry Sanders if it were about an entire network rather than just about one show. So
Right.
the conceit is that it's the world's worst cable network. Like everything they do is just god awful.
Sure.
And so you have behind the scenes stuff, and then you get to have clips of all their terrible shows which gives you a way to satirize all of popular culture.
Mhm.
Like, it was pretty brilliant, but the funny part is that a lot of the shows that we have that we thought we were going so far out were actually made. We had one called, instead of Cops, it was called Dots, and it was about people's cars being towed. That damn thing was on. It was on True TV. It was
My
a show
god.
about people's cars being towed. I was like, "We were kidding."
Oh
So,
my
anyway,
god.
we go out to lunch with Eileen, Liz, Elise, and I,
Mhm.
and we pitch her The Network, which is the name of the show,
Nice.
and she loves it. And we jump in a cab. This is pre-Uber and
Mhm.
Lyft times, and we get in a taxi and we go up to Doug Herzog's office at 1775 Broadway, and we just march right in and we pitch him the show and we get set up in a development deal.
Oh, nice.
A lot of money too. Like,
Yeah.
it was very healthy.
Right.
So we start setting out to just create this show, and we have our 3x5 index cards, and we're creating shows, and we're having fun, and we're
Mhm.
meeting with people. And every time I left the office, it seemed Doug Herzog would go, "You got to do the Daily Show," and I would go, "Nope," and
Wow.
and he would go, "No, you got to do this Daily Show for me," and I was like, "Doug, stop it! I am not doing your stupid Daily Show."
Right.
And then one day, and I don't know how it changed or why it changed, he kind of pushed me against the wall, but we were friends. It wasn't like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
Me
yeah.
Too at all. It was totally fine. It was before those times. And he
Right.
was like, "Madeleine Smithberg, what are you doing? You are in there developing a show that I cannot afford to make. You have to do this daily show for me. I'm going to
Wow.
give you 95% of my production budget and 97% of my promotion budget. This is the job you were born to do. Nobody but you can do it."
Wow.
Then he said the magic words: "You don't have to do a pilot, and they'll keep you on the air for a year."
Holy shit.
And I walked back into the office where Elise and Liz were, and I said, "Girls, take the cards down. We're doing Doug's Daily Show."
Wow. Was there any pushback from them?
There was a tiny bit. They did neither of them are gonna admit it now. Liz is like, "No, I was thrilled." I'm like, "You were not."
Oh my god.
But
Yeah, I
they
can
they
imagine.
got into the head of it, and we just sort of
Right.
brunk, and then one thing led to another, and
Right. And then Craig Kilborn, and then it was but
Craig Kilborn was there,
I
and
always wanted
then
to ask you though, the Craig Kilborn version of it, was that exactly what you guys had? Because the I feel like what the Daily Show became was more your with the way I know you now was more your speed of a thing. So was the Craig Kilborn
no, the
one
Craig
like?
Kilborn one was there. Listen, this is like a thing that was becoming a thing. This
Oh,
is
okay,
like,
okay,
little baby bird,
gotcha.
and we knew that we were disgusted by television network news, and there was too much news, and
Hmm.
the people were making everything about themselves. And so, if you really look back, the problem is that none of those shows exist anywhere
Right.
because John had them all taken down when he took over the show. So the first 2 years, it's like
Oh
what is
shit, I
this,
didn't know that.
mind, the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. Yeah, they were just taken down and they disappeared. Anything we happen to have, some
Wow.
Liz has a bunch of cassettes in her like garage in Minnesota, and so we got some clips.
Holy
But
shit.
there really wasn't a lot that was covered. But quite honestly, a lot of the beginning stuff really has the bones of the older stuff.
Okay.
And the when John came on as a guest, it had been announced that he was going to be the host. He came on with Craig, and
Right.
that was when the first war in Iraq broke out. And we were doing a piece where it was all night vision, and Brian Unger, who was correspondent at the time, was up on the roof, and he was hearing all these like alarms going off,
Hmm.
and it was shot in night vision, and he was supposedly like in Iraq. And then it turned out it was his own car alarm.
Oh my god, that's brilliant.
But you know what I mean? We were right in the middle of absurdity. It was a lot less political, I will say.
Right.
But I think it took a minute to get there, and it really didn't click and become the Daily Show that you think of
Hmm.
until the 2000 election. But it really was the year before. At 1999, we did this thing called the Greatest Millennium, which was a year-end show that was supposed to be a look back at the last millennium. And it was fucking amazing. They Might Be Giants performed. They were our house
Oh, sweet.
band. And yeah, I booked them on Letterman too. I give them and Toad the Wet Sprocket their first.
Okay, so I want to keep talking about the Daily Show too, but I have to ask you about, because your music taste is fucking amazing. Like you
Oh,
had like when we talked about stuff, and you're like, oh, I booked them on this and I booked them on that. Did you actually go out and see, like, what was your process for, like, you went out and saw these bands? Because I
I
mean,
went out and saw bands. I could go anywhere and see them, and then people sent me, like,
sure.
obviously, like, I don't remember what the format was there. Was it CDs? Like, I can't
Oh,
even
okay.
remember what we were listening to music on anymore.
Yeah.
But I also I schmoozed. I was there. There were all these young, it seems, women
Hmm.
working for like Elektra Records, and A&M was actually a guy.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
we were all Wayne Isaac. We were all
Mhm.
friends, and we all had expense accounts. We were all in our 20s.
Oh my god.
And we would go out to these ridiculous meals, and it would be like, "Who wants to pick it up?" I don't know, once, twice, three, shoot. Like, "Okay, I'll take it." Like, nothing nothing ever came back, and I think I went to the Grammys 3 times,
Wow.
and yeah, it was pretty sweet. And
Yeah.
so my friends would go, "Oh, you gotta come see this band." And I would go see the band, and then I'd go meet Billy Bragg backstage and be like,
Wow.
"Hey,
Oh,
you should come
Billy
on
Bragg.
Letterman." And yeah,
Fucking
it was
awesome.
it was some pretty awesome times between the music and the food, and then all the screenings. Like, every movie would come out and you'd be invited to screenings. The
Right.
irony was you never had time because you were working on this show that was on every night. And then
Sure.
once I left the show, I'm like, "Okay, I can go to those screenings now." Oh, guess what? You're not invited.
Oh my god. So did you have to run by, like, if you wanted, like let's say for Toad example. So when you had Toad on, did you have to run that
It
by
pitch it to
anybody?
Paul. Well, yeah, I would have
Okay.
to pitch it to Paul.
Oh, okay, okay.
Pretty much Paul would listen to it and be like, "Yeah, they're
That's
great."
great.
And that would be that. And sometimes he wouldn't get excited, but mostly he would. And he was really easy to deal with and easy to work with. And for me, the music was great because my real thing was the human interest.
Yeah.
And that was so much like there was no system in place for that. There were no, labels with publicists who
Right.
were pitching you stuff, or, magazines. You had to read a million magazines to maybe get one little nugget in like
Right.
some kind of ad. I actually got a guest out of it was the National Enquirer, and it was like a classified ad,
Mhm.
and it was like recipes you can make in your dishwasher. And I was like, "What?" And so I called the woman, and she came and she cooked in her dishwasher, and we did it all throughout the show, kept on, like, checking in on it, and the end of the show, opened the dishwasher, and there's the veal
Fucking
scallopini,
hilarious. Jesus Christ.
steaming hot.
And where there's a couple things I was thinking of too, because there's stories around that I've always seen written about the Daily Show and the segment producing and all the, the stuff that Colbert and Carell used to do or whatever. Were you involved in the one when you guys had to run from the Klan?
No, but it's one of my favorite stories
Oh, okay.
ever. It was
Uh,
Rich Corson, it was one of my producers, and basically, the legal department I was the head of that department, so yes, it was, like, my people, but
okay.
I
Because I
was
saw you guys on what's
generously
that? What was that TV? What was that? I don't.
or
I
the
think they.
Museum of Broadcasting.
That's it. Yes, I saw. Yeah, you and everybody else kind
Story
of.
of how I hired Steven and Steve, and,
That's right.
which was pretty monumental, but the Rich Corson was a producer for me, and Vance DeGeneres was the correspondent, and
Oh, that's right.
basically the
Ellen's brother.
story was about I think it was in Ohio, and it was about the Klan had paid to adopt a highway, like, how you have, like, the adopt a highway
Yeah.
signs, but the local community was like, "No, they can't adopt a highway." So the kind of conceit was that they were being discriminated against.
I think I remember that too because the joke was jokes on them, it's black.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
The highway.
Yeah, the highway, yeah.
Yes. So anyway, we were not allowed to lie. Like, we couldn't say we didn't want to say we worked for Comedy Central, so we would
Right.
say we worked for a news magazine that's part of Viacom. And that was like all we would kind of say.
Right.
So Vance and Rich get on a plane to Ohio, and while they're in the air, one of the Klansmen, their publicist, I guess, discovers
Ah,
that they're Comedy Central and
right.
that they're coming to make fun of them. And so when the way that Rich described it was terrifying. He said you looked into the eyes of these people, and there's like all these like Dobermans and Rottweilers with like spiked collars, and these guys are in
Oh
like a
my god.
trailer.
Right.
And Rich is a pretty good salesman. And so Vance is outside in the car with the crew, and Rich goes in and he just kind of works his magic
Hmm.
and he convinces them that they shouldn't be killed. And Rich comes out and he gets in the car and he goes, "Drive, just drive."
Oh my god.
And they go
That's
driving off
fucking
into the
terrifying.
Ohio fucking night.
Oh my god, dude. I can't. That would have that I don't know how. But see, the thing that it's so funny when listening to those all you guys tell those kind of stories is it's almost like you enjoy, you're like, that was, I'm glad we're alive, but that was fucking hilarious. You know what I mean? That's the kind of
Oh,
comedian,
yeah,
like,
this is my book, Almost Funny. It's
right.
like it's this stuff where things go so far awry that you wanna cry, and then you
Yeah.
realize, "Wait a minute, just give it a minute,
Hmm.
and this is gonna be
Now,
hilarious."
have you reached when you're writing that book, I know going back through stories and old stuff like that, and I'm sure you're going through like career highs and career lows stuff. Is there any part you've hit so far that is hard to go back and kind of relive?
Yeah, I'd rather not talk about that part, though.
I was like, I'm gonna ask this question, and she may want to save it for the book. I don't know, but I
I'll
figured
save
I'd
it for the book.
save it for the book.
I'm still actually dancing with myself
Mm,
into how far I wanna go into sort of my truth of
sure.
my experience and how much I want to write an entertaining book that, doesn't
Right.
have an agenda, because at the same time, I feel like my claim to fame is that I created The Daily Show, so why
Yeah.
should I trash The Daily, you know what I mean? It's like,
Sure.
and I'm not trashing it, it's not, like, whatever, but there was some, things get really tough when you're in that kind of environment,
Of course. Yeah.
and what I found through my experience at both shows, Letterman and the Daily Show, is that success is overrated. That
Mm,
there's something super fun, which is why with Lady Girls, I wanna do it under the radar.
right.
I just wanna be able to play. The whole thing of the Daily Show, being able to play for a year and throw proverbial spaghetti at a proverbial wall, and if it didn't stick, go home.
Right.
Like, and not have the stakes be that high, and then both with Letterman, like, the show got really successful and just
Hmm.
sort of emerged. And then with the Daily Show after the 2000 election, suddenly in those 34 days between the election and the Supreme Court giving it to George W. Bush,
Right.
he became the story.
Yep.
And nobody in the legitimate media could handle it, because all you wanted to we lived in a where our currency was absurdity. And so
Yeah.
suddenly we were the ones that were the most suited to handle this story.
Right.
And, but once the success came, a lot of the fun went away.
That's
And I experienced that on both shows where you kind of wish, "Can't we just go back and play anymore? Can't we realize that none of this means anything? We feel so fucking important all of a sudden just
right.
because, we were on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine? Like, let's try
Which
to
I have, by the way, because and I've only seen like because my when I was in high school is when the Daily Show was also like my high school whole thing was 2000 to 2004. So
oh
all my
my
yeah,
god.
yeah, my friends and I absorbed that shit. And I mean, I think probably my parents or whatever, like they watched like they watched Letterman, they watched Leno and stuff like that. But when 9/11 happened, we watched the Daily Show.
Daily Show, everybody did.
Yeah,
And it was just kind of what it became, and
right.
it became, the paper of record or whatever
Yeah,
it was, which is cool
Mhm.
because you have really smart people telling you what you should think,
Sure.
whose only agenda is they want you to laugh.
Laugh, absolutely.
And so that's really cool, but at the same time, the process itself was not nearly as much fun as
Right.
when we were kind of, you know, existing under the radar.
Right. Do you now know, like, what to look out for when navigating? Because do you think it was being under that kind of spotlight and the pressure, or not even, or maybe self-imagined pressure that was put
I think
on?
it's self-imagined pressure, and I think it comes down to the host, and the host just sort of feeling like, "I don't deserve all these accolades. I'm a terrible person.
Mm.
Uh, why did they all think I'm so amazing when I'm not? We better do a good show tonight or they're gonna find out."
Right, right, right. Right, fuck. Was that
Yeah.
at every do you find that at every, like, did that happen with the Letterman and like, do you feel that happens at every iteration of those kind of things? Once it's like, beginning is very much play, like Letterman was, Daily Show very much
It
play.
depends on the personality of the person,
Got ya.
but I think that both yeah, I think, like, no offense to you, and you're probably fine, but comedians are really fucked up people, large.
100%.
And I think that there's a sort of inability to, like, feel okay with getting all this money and
Right.
accolades. People are just like, "Wait, they don't know that I'm horrible?"
Sure, yeah.
So it's just like cuckoo pants.
Sure, I
Uh,
believe, yeah, 100%. And that's the thing, like, my Joanne, I don't know if you ever met Joanne Filan. She's great comic, and she and I started stand up, or we met, I think she started maybe like a year or so before me, but we met like at Gotham Comedy Club, and we bonded like instantly. And now she'll like go out on the road with me, and she's, we'll either co-headline together, or she'll open, or whatever it is. But basically we call ourselves the misfits of comedy, because and this isn't like a pat on our back thing, but we find like we don't always mesh well with
with the other comedians.
yeah, which is so fucked up, to like, not like, because I love comedians and I love comedy and stuff like that, but then there's this other, what you probably have experienced a million times over, realm of it.
A little bit of dysfunction and,
Yeah.
it's just no happy, well-adjusted people don't necessarily do that for a living. Like, it it's
Yeah, it's
its own
true.
it's its own little
And there's
place.
totally
And
levels of that too, where you're just
yeah,
like, and that's the thing too. Like, I always go back and look at my own, life or career, like in this kind of thing, where I'm like, man, I never really hung out that much. But then I meet other comics who are super successful, who are also like, yeah, I wasn't really a hangout guy either. You know what I mean? I'm like, thank fucking Christ. Like,
yeah.
there's people I like to be around, but then there was environments I didn't like to.
Yeah, and I've heard that those houses on the road are pretty awful.
Holy yes.
Condos. I've heard about the condos. As
And
I said, I never did this. I skipped, like, a
yeah.
whole chapter.
Yeah, and I
Um,
don't, there's situations where Joanne and I will talk about that kind of shit, where we're like, and I know that there's other comedians or people who know I do this kind of thing, and will probably be like, "Fuck that guy," because whoever he thinks. But for me, I'm like, it's not like who I think I am, or that I think
no,
I'm bigger. I just don't want to sleep
you're
on.
well-adjusted, like,
Yeah,
I think that this is a different generation too. I think it's
totally.
possible to be funny and well-adjusted now. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's kind of like things have evolved or changed, and
Right.
we're a little bit out of the clubland or
Yeah.
whatever it is,
And a lot of
and
that shit was rites of passage, you know what I mean? So, like, you would be
yes,
like, "Oh, I don't wanna get fucking shunned because I didn't sleep on the bed a dude just came up," you know what I mean? Like, so you're
mm,
just like, "I don't wanna do that." But yeah, there were always that shit. Like, we'll fight, like, I'll fight for, separate hotel rooms for Joanne, because I'm just like, this is ridiculous. We're
we're
2 adult,
grown-ups.
she's got a wife, I got, me. Like, I don't, it's ridiculous, and it's just stuff that should happen, as
Long.
opposed to, so, but
Yeah,
there's people
but
like,
I think that anything that starts on sort of is built on dysfunction, then just, kind of
yeah,
grows. If that dysfunction is at the bottom,
mhm,
it's always gonna be there because it's in the DNA of the thing.
right.
Um,
That I Thank you for spending time. I know I kept you again, like, way over your time.
Oh, it's fine. I just haven't eaten
Oh my
yet.
God, I get the
I'm
same
on
way.
the
Okay, cool. I'm
West
going to ask you the
Coast.
last 3 questions that I ask every guest that's been on the show.
Okay.
First question is, if you can go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself that would help you today?
Have confidence in yourself. It's gonna be
Beautiful.
okay.
Second question is, what had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are right now? And it can be good or bad. Doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, this is sort of like hack to say, but I think cancer had to
No, go
end
ahead.
so that I could be free to like once again be creative and look at life as a series of possibilities and opportunities. And but I do feel like I'm stronger because of it.
Absolutely.
But I'm really
Yeah, not
sober.
hack at all. I mean, that's a harrowing fucking experience, and for you to come out of it like this is amazing. So, and more motivated too. I'd be like, I'm lying down forever. Uh,
Well, I was lying down for a long time. I had like a year, the year after cancer, I was completely
wow.
paralyzed. And I was sort of working on the book, but I couldn't really dig in, and things were going on. And then, literally, this past April, I think, my mother died, and she had had dementia. This isn't
Right.
funny at all, but she had had dementia for about 14
Wow.
years. And I was sort of the person that was closest. She lived in a assisted living a mile from my
Oof.
house. And first, she was in California with me. Then I moved
Right.
her here, and she had a brilliant woman, had 2 PhDs, just like a force of nature, and just watching her descend into, like, this blithering like, she was pulling her teeth out. At one point, she just kept her fingers in her nose because she was massaging her
Right.
sinuses, and she didn't remember me, and yet I kept feeling like I had to be there. And when she passed away, I was, of course,
Mhm.
heartbroken. But it was almost like I came back to life.
Wow.
So that really answers your credit question better,
Yeah.
because all of a sudden, I just dove into, like, producing the Lady Girls pilot, and I put together a team, and then I put together another team to work on the book with
Mhm.
me, and I was just sort of like I became productive and busy and focused and
Yeah.
optimistic again,
Which
and I was just like, "Oh my god, am I
Yeah,
back?"
yeah. Which is probably what your mother would have
So
wanted anyway. So there you go. That was like a nice gift. Yeah.
really
That's
wanted it,
beautiful.
and yeah.
And the last question is ties into the show, so it's a bit of a goofball question. Answer it however you want. If you wake up tomorrow and you find out it's everybody's last day, which by the way, these drones, who knows, could be. I have no idea now. But you find out it's everybody's last day on Earth. You guys all have 24 hours left. What do you think is going to be the cause? Do you think it'll be political collapse, climate change, aliens, zombies, whatever you want it to, comet heading toward Earth? And how are you going to go out? What's going to be your epic death?
I think it's gonna be
Okay.
nuclear war, inspired by
Okay.
fascism, and I am going to go out eating
Oh,
pasta.
nice. Can I join you? That would be amazing.
Yes,
Thank you. Um,
I'm gonna eat my way
fan.
out.
Oh my God, I love you. Thank you so much again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Aw, you are so
I'll see you
welcome.
soon. Okay.
Yes, you
Peace.
will.
Dystopia tonight.